sole purpose of this podcast is to ignite the fire within you to become a better father, a better husband, a better man, and ultimately lead a better legacy. And I tell you, this weekend was one of those triumphant weekends. It was a fun weekend, and it was also a weekend where I froze my butt off a little bit. But, you know, that goes with the territory of being a dad and being there for your kids. I had the opportunity to fly down to Los Angeles area. My son picked me up, and then he and I and his partner, Matt, and Sarah Newton, we all piled into a car and drove from LA over the mountains to the eastern side of the state, to a small little town called Lancaster, and for Devin's first ever concert. He was invited to participate at the comedy campout, and you know, he reached out to me and Judy and said, "Hey, I have my first concert ever. It's a full hour session, and I would love to be able to have you guys come join us." So Judy and I did everything we could to get there. Judy worked double shifts and traded shifts, and in the end, sadly, she got all of her shift covered except for 90 minutes. So she ended up having to stay home. So I had the opportunity to just go and hang with my son, and I tell you, it was a phenomenal experience to go and watch him bring to fruition his dream and to see him on stage. It was just an absolute amazing experience, and it was, you know, part of a bigger festival, a comedy festival that had other acts, comedians and musicians and sketches, and it was quite the fun experience. We got there on Friday, and Friday was pretty much mostly comedians, and so I had an experience that I wanted to share with you guys that really hit my heart. It made me really think about what I was doing there with my son, but also in general with my kids. So on Friday night, we were bouncing between comedic sessions, and it was getting pretty late, and we went to sit down at this one comedian's performance, and he came out on stage, and it was pretty funny because he goes, "Whoa, dude, I am really high. Whoa, those mushrooms really got me flying." And I'm just sitting there back in my head, just kind of chuckling. And as he's kind of sitting there in his mental haze, he sees my son and he goes, "Hey, do you think you and I could have a chat?" And Devin's like, "Yeah." He goes, "You look like a really kind dude." So him and Devin just started having this conversation back and forth while this guy was on stage. And then he turned to me and he goes, "So who are you?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm his dad." He goes, "Hey, Pops, wow, good to have you, man." He goes, "My dad's not here." And I'm like, "Yeah, and he's missing out." And he goes, "Yeah, you're right. He is missing out." So it just, that little dialogue between the two of us really hit my heart. It made me go, how many times have I missed out on things with my kids? How many times have I not made time? Have I not made the effort to be where my kids are, doing what they're doing, being a spectator and a fan of what they're doing? How often am I walking with them in what they're doing? And so it really made me think about all of the experiences that I've had with my kids, because guys, we all know we get busy. In fact, I had a very interesting conversation with the guy about a month ago, and I was talking to him and he was expressing how frustrating it was for him to make time for his wife. And I go, what do you mean by that? He goes, well, life gets so busy and we just never make any time for each other. We never have any time for each other. And I said, interesting. I go, let me ask you a question. When you first started dating your girl, you were in the midst of college studies. You were working a full-time job. You were, doing everything you could to make ends meet. Life was happening and you were extremely busy, were you not? He goes, yeah. And I go, in the midst of this, you were pursuing this hot little chick that was the desire of your heart. And if she would have, on a Tuesday night, reached out to you and said, hey, I have about an hour. Would you like to come spend some time with me? What would you have done? He goes, yeah, I see where you're going with it. No, I go, what would you have done? He goes, I would have packed my stuff up, got my car, and drove over to see her, even if it was for an hour. And so I'm like, yes, just because life is happening differently now doesn't mean that you don't still need to make time for the things that are most precious. That lady in your life, the kids in your life. Because I tell you, man, the next day, we had a phenomenal time. We were laughing. There were great skits. There's a little bit on the crass side sometimes, but some of them were extremely funny. Some of them weren't so funny. And then the next day, we wake up, and I got to tell you something about this valley that we're in, because Lancaster is protected by mountains, but what's happening is the ocean breeze is coming over those mountains, and it is just blowing through this valley. All night we were just bundled up. I literally had 5 layers of clothes on. 5 layers. And I thought I was going to be warm enough. But dude, the wind was just shredding through that valley and shredding through our camp out. And man, we got so cold that night. When we woke up in the morning, I actually woke up early, and it was like 7. It was Easter Sunday morning. So I actually walked up this beautiful hill and overlooked the valley and just had some quiet time with me and the man upstairs, and just prayed and pondered and meditated and just soaked in the beauty of this valley. And I stood up there and I'm looking down at the valley with all of the tents and all the comedy festival tents and stages and stuff. And I'm like, wow, I'm having a moment with my son. A moment with my son. And yeah, I'm sitting here freezing to death. And after a while, about 9:30, so I got up at 7 and walked down about 9:30, and they're all freezing. And we literally are cooking breakfast around this fire. Me, Sarah, Devin, and Matt. And we're all trying to get warm. We're shaking. And Devin's making the eggs and the bacon. And then after we eat, we're sitting there shielded by 2 cars, but the wind is still shredding around us and just ripping through our bodies. And finally, I'm like, man, I got to get some hot chocolate or something. So we go over to the food trucks because we didn't bring hot chocolate. The guys brought coffee. So I walk over there, and what's the one thing they don't have? They go, yeah, it's on the menu, but we failed to bring it. So we decided to drive into the town of Lancaster, and we're driving in, and I go, I wonder if it's always this windy. And Devin goes, well, look at the trees. And all of the trees were leaning at 10 to 15 degrees. And all of the branches were pulled windward. There wasn't one tree that had limbs on both sides. It was just shredded through. And so we went to Starbucks. We had a great visit there. And then we drove back for the afternoon's events of comedy. And then finally, to watch Devin get on stage to perform his hour-long concert. It was absolutely an amazing experience to sit in the audience and watch my son play. And to not only watch him play, but do it so professionally, so proficiently, so adeptly. I mean, he's written his own songs, a complete hour, and I think he did 2 covers of other artists, Chris Isaacs and Lauryn Hill, but the rest was all his. And he did a complete looping concert. So he's doing all of the acoustics, the muffled trumpet, the singing, the guitar. I mean, it was absolutely amazing. And I'm sitting back here and I'm watching and I'm soaking it all in. I'm watching my son and going, man, he's living his dream. And I'm here to witness it, to be a part of it. And as I'm watching my son, the conversation with the comedian the night before, where he said, man, my dad's not here. And he's missing out. And I'm sitting there going, I'm not missing out. I'm here. I'm present. I'm involved. I helped him set up the audio. I'm sitting there as a proud dad videoing every single moment so that I can share with my wife as soon as I get home. Guys, don't miss that moment. Because it's interesting because as I reflect back on the conversation with the comedian, and I could tell he had a moment of reflection going, yeah, my dad's not here. And I could tell that maybe he would have liked to have been here. So guys, are you making times to be present with your kids? It doesn't matter at what age they are. Little toddlers all the way to almost 30 years old, and they're pursuing their dreams. I mean, there are so many opportunities for you to be there, to be present, to be engaged. I mean, I think about all of the experience with my kids. I mean, science fair projects. Every single one of my kids, I got to build mouse cars with them. I mean, none of ours ever won, but to have night after night trying to figure out how we were going to construct these mouse cars so that they could go the distance, they could go farther than anybody else, and experimenting and trying different things with each one of the kids and building, Lego construction things out of pretzels and for their history projects. And then going to art festivals where their art was featured. Or going to jazz and choir concerts where they were singing with their classmates. Or going to a theater production where 1 or 2 of your kids were performing in, and to watch them explore their talents, to see if there was something that they had within them, and more importantly, a love for that. And all the while, I'm there at every one. Me and my wife are at every one possible. And going to basketball games and track and freezing my butt off at cross country. It's like literally watching my kid take 2 laps around, and I literally see him 3 times in a 3-mile race. But yet at that moment when he's passing by, Judy and I are cheering him on. He knows that we're there. Right? So let me ask you a question, guys. What are you missing out on? What if you become so busy that you can't make time for the lady in your life? You can't make time for the kids in your life. Because we're all busy. We're all building our businesses, or we're working for somebody else, or we're, working multiple jobs. Dude, make time for that which is most important. Make time for that which is most important. Because you don't want to be one of those dads where your kids go, yeah, I had a dad, but I didn't see him much. And more importantly, I didn't feel his influence that much. And some of you guys, I get it. You're dealing with split families. You're dealing with divorce. you're trying to wrangle and wrestle and emotionally are just drained with the conversations that are going on with your ex or your baby mama, and you're trying to figure out how to get time, guys, you need to do everything you can to earn that time, to make that time. Because I can tell you, it goes by in a blink. I blinked and my kid was 3. I blinked again and they were 12. I blinked again and they were out of the house. So guys, don't miss a moment, because now Judy and I are going, when can they come to our house to have Easter dinner? When are they coming to our house to have pizza night on a Friday? Or when can we go and spend some time with them and watch them flourish? Because one of the great, and I get it, man, being a dad can be challenging. It can be frustrating. It can be like, how are these kids ever going to learn? What am I not doing right? And you can second guess yourself, especially when you lose your cool. I mean, how many of you guys have lost your cool and you're just like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? They didn't deserve that. But how many of you after that moment went to them and said, you know what, Dad wasn't his best. And I want you to know that I'm sorry. And that I love you. And I'll do better. Because I tell my kids all the time, look, I am not the perfect dad. You guys know that. You see my flaws. You see my rough spots. More than anybody else in the world. You and Judy see that more than anybody else. And sometimes are the blunt of the worst sides of myself. But even though I'm an imperfect dad, I am trying to love you perfectly. So guys, take a moment, look at your life, and go, how can I make time for those moments? How can I make sure that I'm not missing a moment with my kids? Because it goes so fast. And I tell you, not only will your kids remember that you were present, that you were involved, they will remember how you made them feel when you put your arms around them and say, man, I am so proud of you. And I love who you've become. And I love watching you become even more, because that is the ultimate reward of being a father, is seeing your children become more than you ever imagined. And it's because they were able to build their foundation on the principles, the guidelines, the strength, and the love that you have for them as a dad. So dad, don't miss those moments. Because you could be just like that comedian and go, yeah, my dad's missing it. So don't you dare miss it. So in closing, I want to close out with a snippet from my son's concert. I hope you enjoy it. It's a song called Excited that he wrote. It's looped, arranged, and it is beautifully sung and beautifully played. I hope you enjoy the song. And you guys, thank you so much for joining me. And we will check you same time, same bat channel, just next week, right here on Father's Fire. See ya!
Can you hear that? Do do da do do. Do do da do da do do. Do 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 do da do da do do. Do 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 do da do do do. Wait me by me by do do. Wait me by do do da do do. Do do da do do. Wait me ba ba do ba you ba 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 be ba boo. Wait me ba do ba. Everybody's gonna die. Life's a blank walk and see. Everybody's gonna cry, but crying just ain't for me. They will say that I'm wrong, that the devil lives inside of me. But baby, where I'm going, I live so sensationally. You saw me and say go hide it. I kissed a girl and baby liked it. Those thoughts are trying to deny it, but boy, I see that you're excited. You're excited, so excited, so excited. You're excited. So excited, you're so excited, you can turn off your mind, straight and narrow it comes for free. You don't know about these lies, so baby listen carefully. They're going to take your life, you bury you while you breathe. A bridge to the other side, but it's just you and me. You saw me and said go hide it. I kissed a girl and baby liked it. Those thoughts are trying to deny it, but boy, I see that you're excited. You're excited, so excited, so excited. You're excited, you're excited,